This program includes discussion of suicide and mental health, which may be distressing for some listeners. If you or someone you know is in crisis, you can call or text 988 in the United States to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, available 24 hours a day.
Welcome to a special edition of The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, coming to you from the Pritzker Military Museum and Library in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And as we speak this hour, there are more than 50,000 American troops stationed in the Middle East as the war in Iran continues into its third month. We have seen the effects of the war on our economy, on our global alliances, on our federal budget, and of course, on our military. And there are effects you can see. More than a dozen soldiers killed, many others injured, damage to U.S. military bases across the Middle East. There are also effects you can't see on active duty military and on veterans. And that's what we're going to talk about this hour, the lasting toll of military service on mental health. Post-traumatic stress disorder and suicide remain urgent concerns, with suicide still the leading cause of death among U.S. service members today, and one of the top causes of death for veterans, especially younger veterans. So we want to talk about solutions this hour. We hope you'll join the conversation at listentothemiddle.com or by leaving us a message at 844-4MIDDLE. That is 844-464-3353. Joining me here in Kenosha, Laura Colbert, a combat veteran, an author and speaker, and a member of the Wisconsin Board of Veterans Affairs. Laura, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Bob Curry is also here. He's a Vietnam War vet and founder of Dryhootch, which is a peer support group for veterans. Bob, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you much.
And I want to hear first from both of you. Laura, you served in Iraq and Kuwait more than 20 years ago now. It's amazing it's been that long. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and what it was like when you came back home?
Sure. We were deployed at the very beginning of the war. In fact, we were the first permanent establishment in Iraq after the Marines went through, and we were in Kuwait as they were going through. We lived in a bombed-out building in Baghdad for 9 months, and then we moved to tents thereafter within Baghdad. And we were military police officers, so even though I was National Guard and even though I was a woman, we were on the front lines every day. I have many experiences in which we were getting shot at. There were also mortars and rockets flying into our compounds on an almost nightly basis, especially towards the end of the war. We lost the first female in the history of the National Guard in a combat-related incident, and I was on that exact same route at the exact same time the night before, and we got attacked the exact same way, but we got out unscathed. So the fact that in 2015 they said that's the first time women could go to combat, I find that interesting because we were obviously there in 03 and 04 as well. And when I got home, it was really hard. I was thinking that home was going to be this heavenly facade and nothing could go wrong because I'm in control of my life, I'm doing what I want to do, I'm with my friends and family. And then I couldn't get out of this terrible, isolating funk of just constantly thinking about what I had been through and not relating to anybody back home.
And you were a student at the University of Wisconsin in Madison.
I was.
And you didn't feel like you had the support that you needed there when you got back.
Yeah, and it's no fault to Madison. In fact, my parents, my dad served during Vietnam. My older brother served in Iraq as well. He was in Ramadi when I was in Baghdad. But it was every other person there. When you have less than 1% of the population actually served. So there's so much removal from the actual war that's occurring, and nobody understood what we had just gone through. So I couldn't relate to people very well.
Bob Curry, you served in the Army during the Vietnam War. You flew over 250 combat reconnaissance missions. That was more than 50 years ago. But you have said that in some ways you never really left the battlefield. What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, Vietnam was a very strange place. You know, you had, quote, before PTSD, you have different, you know, World War I, World War II. They still have, you have the ability to ask for help. During Vietnam, there was no PTSD, or whatever you call it. So you had to have a different medical problem, and so when you came back, I came back at the end of at the war, and with all of the country was against. No, I shouldn't say, but a majority of them were against the war. You know, it was right after Kent State,
Right.
when that happened. So when we came back, the other thing is we came back one by one. You know, some before you came in this current one, you had veterans coming back and forth. So you came back one by one. So when you came back you came into Seattle, and the government at that time decided, okay, in 1 or 2 days we'll get you out of here. Nowadays it's different because they talk about PTSD and take some time out and that kind of thing, and we still haven't figured one out yet. But when you came back, we got a new uniform, and we got on a bus, kind of looked like being for school, going to the airport. And I always wondered why they did it at night. So, you know, normal people wouldn't be during the day. But anyway, we get off the bus, and we hear some people going about, it's incoming. And I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I get off, and it's protesters out there. And they're throwing rocks and everything else. And these were like middle-aged people. And so when I got off and we got into the airport, I went to the men's room, and I took my uniform and I stuffed it in the garbage to put on.
Wow,
regular
civilian clothes.
Yeah, and I came back, and so what you talk about with the percentage, nobody wanted to talk about it. Number one, they don't understand it. They're not sure what to say. The same problem with us is, so you stuff everything inside, and you really can't until you talk to another vet. But when you came back by one, you couldn't talk. You wouldn't, you know, you didn't what they were.
Well, and we mentioned that you founded this organization called Dryhootch, which is a peer support group for veterans. What is it about having that peer support of people who understand your experience that maybe you can't get from people who didn't go into the military, didn't have that experience?
Yeah, well, you know, I went to college. I worked for companies, and then I started unraveling alcoholism, all that kinds of things. The VA during that point, up until the 1980s, nobody wanted to go to the VA. There are people today that will still not go on the grounds of the VA. So it was at that point where I was probably, my daughter is here, and she's watched your dad unravel, and I came up, I went up to 300 pounds. I was alcoholic, and my life just blew up. And anyway, on the other side of that, when I got help, I got with other vets. We decided that we needed a place, so we came up with Dry being no booze. Nowadays it's no drugs, and Hooch was a place in Vietnam, and so the idea was Dryhootch, and we thought, you know, at the VFW and stuff like that, it's all about alcohol. And so we came up, because my daughter's working at coffee houses, so we came up with, so when you come into a coffee house, and you can talk to other vets who have been there. They can finish up your language.
Laura, I mentioned that there is a war going on right now in the Middle East. What is that like for you? Does it bring up memories when this is happening?
Yeah, it actually breaks my heart on so many levels. And I think about this with Ukraine as well, when they started getting bombed. There's something so, it breaks you when you do not have a safe place to go and you don't know if you're gonna be here tomorrow. And many civilians are feeling that, and in Gaza and Ukraine and Iran and Syria and everywhere, and it fundamentally changes who you are on a cellular level. Mm-hmm. I would go to bed at night, and I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day. So I made myself a promise that when I got home, I would do the most good that I could, and I would only do the things that bring me joy for an occupation, because I don't want to be stuck on doing doldrum work every day when we don't know how much time we have left on this earth. And so just knowing that these kids and these families and the elderly, they just don't know if they're going to make it out every day, and that they're not going to see life the same way again, and they're going to be tainted in a different way, it breaks my heart.
Obviously, there are a lot of services available to veterans within the VA, but you're saying it's necessary to have this external community, because that's where you're going to be able to have this real talk with your peers who have been through similar things. Is that, you feel that way too, Laura?
The first release of stress that I felt when I got home was when some of us Army girls got together after being apart for 6 months, and I realized they were going through a similar thing that I was, and I felt so much lighter knowing that I had solidarity with my fellow soldiers. And so there is something very special about having that connection with fellow veterans that you feel like people can't relate to other than them.
You know, as people hear this, and a lot of our listeners probably will hear this and have no military background, aren't in a military family, and they think, oh, maybe this conversation is not for me. But in fact, it is for them. It's exactly for them, because it is sort of on all of us to be part of the solution to making sure that veterans feel seen when they come back from battle. What do you think about that? What is your message to people who don't have a military background, aren't in the military, about what they need to know about helping when it comes to veteran mental health?
I think they need to take a second and listen, because if somebody brings it up, it's probably because they want or need to talk about it. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, that's the same thing as just give us a chance to talk about, the fear that you had, that you have now, and know that there's other younger people are going in harm's way. So when you make a decision or you talk to the politician and let's go this place or let's save these people, it's going to be a toll on us, to our children. And when you talk about PTSD, remember there's a family attached to that. So your spouse, your kids, if you start drinking or you drug or whatever, or you need some help, they're going to feel that effect. So it keeps on going and on and going. So give a chance to talk to somebody else and just start the conversation.
I have had so many people approach me after I give a presentation about my experience, or who have read my book and said, now I understand this person who served, my significant other, my parent, my sibling, so much better because of the articulation of being able to understand what post-traumatic stress looks like, how some people deal with it. And I'm sure Bob can relate. We're speaking on behalf of ourselves, because every veteran goes through this differently. And post-traumatic stress can come late, it can come right away, it can come in different forms. You drank, I cry. And so it's really important to get to know your veteran in your life and find out what you can do to support them.
Be the first person to ask about it too.
Absolutely.
All right, well, stand by. In a moment, we're going to get to some of the reasons that veterans don't seek treatment for mental health issues. I'm Jeremy Hobson. You're listening to a special edition of The Middle from the Pritzker Military Museum and Library in Kenosha, Wisconsin. This is a special edition of The Middle coming to you from the Pritzker Military Museum and Library in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I'm Jeremy Hobson. And this hour, we're talking about mental health among members of our military and our veteran community. We are not taking live calls this hour, but we'd love to hear from you at 844-4MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353, or at listentothemiddle.com. And we will use some of your voicemails on our podcast. The follow-up, just subscribe to The Middle wherever you get your podcast to hear that. My guests are Laura Colbert, an Iraq War veteran, author, and speaker, and Bob Curry, a Vietnam War veteran and founder of Dryhootch. And when you look at the statistics, it is pretty shocking. Among active duty military, suicide is the #1 cause of death. Military service members are nearly 9 times as likely to die by suicide than they are in combat. What's going on in your view, Bob?
Well, there there's nobody out there. You talked about the number of people that actually go into the military, and then 1%, that actually go overseas into a conflict. It's a very small portion, and nobody else, they don't understand what's going on. So you talk about how do you get help? Well, number one, who have been in the military, you don't go ask for help. But between all of us, nobody has a problem like mental health, quote. You won't go, if you have a problem, what it is, PTSD, can you walk to a hospital and say I have a problem? That takes a whole lot. So it's easier to, and I hate to say that, to take yourself out than to try to what's going on with you.
You agree with that, Laura?
Yeah, there were a few moments when I questioned whether or not it was worth staying on this earth. I think you had mentioned when you came back, you were singletons. Mm-hmm. When I came back, we came back together. But when we got to Fort McCoy, they said, fellow soldiers who had gotten there before us said, don't talk too much about what you saw. Don't talk too much about your mental health, because they're going to keep you on Fort McCoy longer. We had just done a 16-month deployment. The last thing I wanted was to not go home in that moment. And so I lied. I told them things that I said I didn't see dead bodies. I said that I didn't get blown up. I said I was fine, and I was not fine, but I just wanted to get home. And when you're at basic training, you are brainwashed. You are told to be tough. You are told you want to kill the enemy. You are told that you should be able to withstand everything and anything. And so it is really hard to have this incredibly tough persona where you can take on the world, but yet you can't take care of yourself.
And you may have a problem that's not associated with PTSD, but in fact it is. I talk about the alcoholism. That's because you wake up in the middle of the night and you think you're back in the shed. So, and you wake up and how do you work with that? How do you explain that to your wife? That I had a friend who, if somebody walked into his room, because he lived with a mom, she would touch him and he would just ballistic. So he started putting different things that he could knock over the wife or the mother, so he could wake up and know that he's not beating the heck out of her mother. So all of the things, how do you, when you don't know what it is, so how do you go get help?
Why do you think, Laura, that it is so much more prevalent, suicide that is, among younger veterans? It's one of the top causes of death among veterans under 45 years old.
Yeah, and that 4 times the amount of people have died by suicide than by actual military, post 9/11 military action, which is insane. Why it's younger, I don't know. I think because they probably don't have the capacity and the network to get the help that they need, and they take matters into their own hands. And as we get older, we realize that we need to lead on others, and we have a broader depth of the world around us and the options that are available to us.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, when they look at the VA, that I think we touched on that, in that it's an institution. It's part of the government. So things that they don't flow very easily. And sometimes you can't help, or you go in or you get insulted or whatever. So the thing, like I said, the Vietnam vets that will not be on the ground of a VA because they have been screwed over before, and they're not going to go back again. So they probably get at that point where they give up. And then you talk about COVID, and you talk about jobs and stuff, and what's going on with school. Is that important or not? So there's a lot of decisions going on, and you finally get at that point where, is this worth it?
Yeah.
So the best deal, I think, is to find some other vets that you can share.
Well, and in fact, according to a statistic in the VA report on suicide, 61% of veterans who died by suicide in 2023 were not receiving VA healthcare in the last year of their life. We have some members of our studio audience at the microphone. If you could just identify yourself and tell us where you're from, and then go ahead with your comment.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for this program, and thank you for being here. This is a much necessary conversation. I'm Dr. Joe Triani. I'm director of a graduate program in military clinical psychology. I train veterans who are going to go into the VA, but even more important, I have a number of students that are HPSP scholars, which means when they complete their studies, they go active duty in the military. Just a side note, I'm also a retired United States Navy. My question is, a disturbing study was released earlier this year that reported 40% of the men and women who are transitioning out of the military, they've completed their contract, they've completed their time, reported in a survey conducted by the US government General Accounting Office, 40% are reporting mental health problems. Those are numbers that are even higher than those who were leaving the military after World War II, 40%. How do we address this? What aren't we doing? What should we be doing? I mean, these numbers are staggering.
Great question. Thank you so much. Laura, go ahead.
Well, I have a feeling that that number was probably pretty much the same after World War II and Vietnam, but they didn't have the words and the articulation, and it was actually seen as not being very brave or honorific if you were fine or if you were not fine when you got home, right? Everybody wanted you to be good about what you just went through. And there wasn't the support that there is now. Now we have words for it, we have support for it, and so more people can identify that they have it.
Another comment from the audience. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name is Emily Glenn. I am from Wisconsin. I am just a friend of a veteran. And I just had a question for you too, if you would speak a little bit about your experiences with the VA, especially with regards to healthcare and how it intermingles with private healthcare and how you get the care you need, how easy or hard it is to navigate through that system, and additionally, what impacts you think are going to happen now that the VA has really been gutted budgetarily in this country, and how much that is going to impact the veterans that we have now.
Well, I can say that it's changed dramatically in the 20 plus years since I've been home. Thanks for saying that. When I got home, I went to the VA because I had not had a physical in years because of my deployment. And the doctor I was seeing was like, we don't really serve women here. We don't do that kind of thing. We only serve like 80-year-old men. And I went back to UW-Madison and talked to my veteran service officer, and she said, you need to go back because there's actually a women's clinic. So I did go back, and I got the help I needed at the VA. I've had some very good and some very bad therapists there as well. I think the thing that's most frustrating for women is when we walk in, the first question we get asked is, who are you here to visit? Not, do you have an appointment here? So the assumption is still that we are not a veteran or that we did not see combat. And as far as how it relates to private health care, so now I live in Wapaka, which is not near a VA. So I get community care in Wapaka, so I get to choose who I see, which is good. But by the time I left Madison in 2017, I was getting good health care. My older brother actually works in the VA hospital in Madison and has noticed morale is lower, and we've lost a lot of really good people at the hospital because of the budget cuts. So it is significantly affecting the Madison VA.
It's interesting that you bring up the idea of how women are treated when they go into the VA, because I wonder also whether some of the problem has to do with kind of just the macho culture and people not wanting to admit that they have a problem with their mental health, which exists outside the military too, but probably way more so in the military.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, in the beginning, after Vietnam, nobody went, like I mentioned before, because you didn't have the good quality of people. At one point, my wife called the VA and said that I'm having problems drinking didn't know what PTSD at that point, and they never called her back. At some point, and then after I got straightened out when I started working with Dryhootch and stuff like that, creating that. And we've had, and I don't want to say excellent, but we had a lot of good people. We had vets that are doctors that have been over in war, so that you can relate to them. You know, it's not somebody from a Ivy League college where they don't understand what's going on. But like you said, we're worried about the cuts. You know, I see doctors walking away or people that are therapists or whatever. And so I worry about that we're going to lose those people. But when you talked about the Macho thing is very much.
You know, you mentioned Ivy League there. I know the University of Wisconsin-Madison is not in the Ivy League, in fact, but
Pretty close.
You have talked, Laura, about how, and you say you live in Wapaka now, it's a smaller town, that you feel like you have more support as a veteran in a small town like that than you did in Madison, a much more cosmopolitan place.
And I hate to say it because I love Madison, but when I was teaching at one of the high schools, they didn't even discuss Veterans Day. There was no stopping at 11:11. There was not a single thing. And I decided I would never work on Veterans Day again because it broke my heart. And so when I moved to Wapaka, and all of a sudden, I'm honored in so many ways. I was in the school district there too. I was the principal at the middle school. Everywhere I turned, everybody was thanking me for my service.
What do you think that's about? Why that difference? Because that probably exists, frankly, in small towns versus larger cities all over the country.
Well, I think Wapaka is a little bit unique because we have the Veterans Home in King right next door. And so there's many veterans in the area because of that. But also, I think rural Wisconsin is more all about America and all about celebrating our history. And Madison, it tends to be more progressive, forward-thinking, and not so much on the past. And I'm sure there's many, many less people who have served in the Madison area than probably in rural. There's a lot of people, that's where they go, is in the military.
Go ahead, Bob.
And besides, it's a Madison.
What does that mean? As somebody who doesn't live in Wisconsin, what does that mean?
Well, you look at the protests during Vietnam. I mean, Madison was a location where a lot of the protests, bombings were, stuff like that.
Right.
And I'm being a joke in a weird way, but when you get to the larger places, maybe not as bad as Chicago, who has more people going into the military than even Milwaukee.
I know as an Illinoisan, it's always worse in Illinois when you live in Wisconsin, right? Let's go to another comment from the audience.
My name is Reverend Kathleen Gloff. I serve the church right up the street in Summers, Wisconsin. I'm also trained as a certified peer specialist. It's a mental health classification that differs from the medical model. In the peer support model, the person who's offering support to a peer would have lived experience. So I have lived experience in chronic depression, and I am able to listen to people who have other mental health issues. Some people work in the criminal justice system. Some people work with veterans. Some people work in mental health centers. But that training is available through the Department of Public Health in the state of Wisconsin.
Have you worked with veterans yourself, or have you been able to share experiences that sort of cross those lines?
I have not worked with veterans myself, but in my class to become a certified peer specialist, we had several veterans, and they commented that it's so much easier to deal with PTSD when you're talking to a vet than anyone else.
Thank you for that comment. I just want to ask, because we have talked about the VA a lot, and if you look at the budget for this kind of thing, it's actually, there are billions of dollars being spent on mental health at the VA. There's a $500 million within the Pentagon on suicide prevention, $500 million. Is it about the money? Or is it just about sort of how things, like, would you say to the Pentagon, and to the president, you need to spend more money on this, or is it's just not being done right?
Yeah, I think it is a problem that you're talking about the government and you're talking about an institution like the VA. They have its different way of how you allocate money, and so the end doesn't end. You don't get the information. You don't get peers that talk to each other. The amount of money for facilities, things like that. So it gets lost at the end.
What do you think, Laura?
I think that there should be a different way to address the mental health in veterans. And I think that starts at the entrance level into the military, saying that it's okay if you have a problem, instead of waiting till the end or waiting till they're released and then get to the root cause. What's the root cause? And where does it start, and how can we tell them that it's okay to ask for help? You cannot help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. And so many veterans, again, feel that they can handle it on their own. And sometimes they think that handling it is suicide.
We got this comment from Jen in Chicago. She says, shortened deployments for those who show signs of PTSD, onset, or other mental health conditions. There should be free ongoing mental health services for veterans. We need those who serve to come home healthy. No global issue is worth compromising the mental health of the American population.
Will they get an honorable discharge or a medical discharge? Because that would also make a huge difference.
All right, well, stand by, because in a moment, we are going to be back with more of a special edition of The Middle from the Pritzker Military Museum and Library in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Welcome back to a special edition of The Middle, coming to you from the Pritzker Military Museum and Library in Kenosha, Wisconsin. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We are not taking calls this hour, but we'd love to hear from you at 844-4-MIDDLE. That's 844-464-3353, or you can write to us at listentothemiddle.com. We're talking this hour about mental health among active duty military, among veterans, and what can be done to improve it. We're going to continue this conversation on our podcast. You can just subscribe to The Middle on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And I am joined right now by Bob Curry, a veteran and founder of Dryhootch, and Laura Colbert, a veteran speaker and author. Laura, what do you think is the most significant thing, single most helpful thing for people struggling with this? Or is it different for everyone?
It's different for everyone. I can tell you that the thing that changed my life was that when my older brother got back from Iraq, a few months after I did, we both lived in Madison. And I had finally reached my breaking point actually a year after we got home. And I was driving, I was supposed to go to a practicum to do some student teaching, and I couldn't even drive because the tears were coming so strong, and I was just crying so heavily, and I pulled over in Madison and I called my other brother and I said, take me to the hospital right now. And I had him to call because I knew he would understand in some level what I had been through. My older brother had found himself at some point on the side of the road on a major highway by Madison having a blackout panic attack a few years after that. So he also understands the gravity of what can happen with post-traumatic stress. But it was that moment and that therapist and the fact that my brother dropped everything to come that really, truly saved my life.
Bob?
Yeah, the same thing is that if I didn't have I didn't have part of the family in the military, and remember that we left people one by one coming back home. I didn't reach out to somebody until 30, 40 years ago after the fact, and that I only talked to them because my life has fallen apart. Now, I didn't commit suicide at that point, but you don't know what's going on in your head, and you deny that it's got anything to do. If somebody says, well, that was 20 years ago, well, now, and you don't have somebody else that's been through it, you don't know. You listen and you go, okay, that was 20 years ago, so I must be it might be just an alcoholic.
You know, it's interesting, though, that what the theme in what both of you just said is that it is about community and somebody else being very important in helping you. We just did a program recently about how you make a big change in your life, and one of the things was you need the help of another person. They accept that change, they believe in you, they believe that you can make that change, and that's an important part of it as well, that community. Let's get to another comment from the audience. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Bill Watson, and I'm here with my wife, and we are partners in a nonprofit organization that we started about 13 years ago called Feast of Crispian. We're actors, theater educators, and we use Shakespeare and acting as a way to interact with veterans and help them tell their stories. We spent a lot of time at the Hooch collecting veteran stories and turning them into devised theater pieces that we perform. We did one of our storytelling pieces here not too long ago. And I think things like Dryhootch, places where veterans can be seen and be heard in their stories. I mean, I think that is just central. It's what you're talking about right now about community. It's harder all the time, isn't it, in the life we live today, to have real conversations with people, right? We're so mediated, we've got our devices, we don't sit and have deep conversation. And those deep conversations and that ability for them to have a place to come and tell their story, and we're gonna put their story on stage and have it told either by them or by somebody else. And the fact that they feel heard and witnessed has had remarkable effects. And I just think that ability to have that kind of interaction is central. That's got to be body to body, person to person. And that's kind of disappearing, and I think that's a central piece of what's at work for a lot of us.
Yeah. I want to ask about something else that is significant right now in sort of thoughts about how to deal with this problem, and that is the growing research into psychedelic-assisted therapies for PTSD, MDMA, psilocybin, ketamine. What do you think about that, Laura? I won't ask the founder of Dryhootch, but Laura, what do you think about that?
I can proudly say I've never done a drug in my entire life.
Wow.
Or smoked a cigarette. But I know veterans who have done that and swear by it and says that it is a very useful product and a very useful thing. So I say we all suffer differently, right? And we all can recover differently, and if it works for them, that's great.
What do you think, Bob?
As a Vietnam vet, yeah, there was a little bit of medication. And I'm not sure it was good or bad, but along with that, I think it's different for other people. And if it works for them, that's great.
Let's get to another member of our audience. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Timothy O'Brien. First of all, I want to say welcome home to both of you. Welcome home is how Vietnam veterans greet each other, even though it's like, 50 some odd years ago. I was recently, only a couple of years ago, diagnosed with PTSD, 53 years after the fact. And the reason that happened was there was a long period of time where if you made a certain amount of money, you were not eligible for VA benefits. How insane is that? Well, that law changed, and I got a call out of the blue from somebody from the VA, and I didn't believe it. But I went through a bunch of stuff and eventually got some help. All right, imagine 50 years carrying this load around, and now I just have to drop it. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
And I actually want to say thank you to all the Vietnam veterans in the room, because it is because of your dedication, and even if you didn't agree with the war in Iraq or Afghanistan, you still made sure that the veterans came home and felt supported. So I just really want to thank you for that, because I know you didn't have that when you got home.
And I should say, by the way, that there are a number of veterans in the audience right now, and we are in a facility that is shaped like a Higgins boat, which is one of the boats that was used in the D-Day invasion. If you're watching us on YouTube or you're watching us on Spotify, you can see the room that we're in. Let's get to another member of the audience here.
Hi, my name is Jonathan Nisley. I'm an emergency medicine physician at the VA in Madison. And so I encounter veterans who are dealing with mental health crises or substance abuse crises, maybe in a little different setting than some. And in my experience, there are I'm blown away by the amount of resources and whether it's inpatient or outpatient resources that we have available for people, even when we discharge them, to facilitate close follow-up and support outpatient. So I'm dismayed, disappointed to hear that there's a perception that there isn't help available. And so how do we make people aware? How do we then, for the younger veterans, how do we break down some of these barriers for the older veterans, Vietnam veterans? My dad was a medic in the Air Force in Vietnam, late father, and my father-in-law was a doctor in the Army and in charge of a MASH unit in Vietnam. And I understand from their experiences the hesitancy to engage with the VA. So I believe that's real, but I think that it's hugely important to break down those barriers. And then how do we find a way to balance the engagement with the VA system itself and also keeping the importance of this shared experience, because of course you're going to share things with your buddies and your friends that you may not share with a doctor. And so how do we balance all of that and just create the largest safety net and provide the most support possible, and I don't know, engage everyone.
Do you have a solution to that? Is there something that you think would make people more willing to take advantage of the services that are available to them as veterans?
I don't yet. I started there almost a year ago in about a week, and so I'm learning. But I do think that it is amazing the amount of help that they're willing to give. And like I said, relative to the community and private hospital settings. And so I don't, off the top of my head right now, know how we get that outreach going. But it's something that I think we have to figure out how to advance.
Thank you so much for that. Laura, what do you think?
I'm reflecting on a few things that happened during my time at war, and one of them was when somebody would go on leave and come back, and they would shy away from the bombs that were coming in, and the rest of us just stood there like it was not a big deal. We would laugh at the people who were shying away from it and afraid of it. And then when this new brigade came in, and we were getting mortared one night, you would see this brigade just run past you to their hooches as fast as they could, and we're just walking because we know if we're gonna get hit, we're gonna get hit. And like, we laughed at them. It was a joke that they were afraid. When I got home and had my first panic attack at sergeant school at Fort McCoy, the medic told me, just get over it. And he's really lucky he didn't leave with a black eye, because I had a lot of anger at that time. So there's this systemic idea of like, we razz each other, and instead of saying, you need to go get help, we make fun of them. And so it's almost like this idea like, yeah, you don't go get help because then you're a pansy. And I can say that because that's delicate flower. Instead of like, oh man, you're dealing with something right now, maybe you should go see somebody. And so just being able to have that open dialogue and not create such a stigma against mental health when you're in the system.
How would you respond, though, to our audience member, Jonathan, who says he wishes that people would take more advantage of the services that are available at the VA?
Yeah, and so I think that we just need to be able to support each other more instead of laugh at each other. Like, that's my point. And I don't know. I feel like I know that if I need assistance, I can walk into the VA and get the assistance. And I feel like other veterans should know that too, but I could be naive in that. But I did get very positive support.
Yeah. Let's get to one more member of the audience here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eduardo Vargas. I work at Gateway Technical College. I'm a veteran support specialist there. And getting the word out, to me, it's having the resources that you can share with all the veterans, that I can share with all the veterans while I'm at school. Sharing my stories with them shows them that they're not alone. I'm a crier. I try to control myself, but I
You don't have to control yourself. That's
I can't do
fine.
it.
I mean, like,
You're doing
I'll
great.
be a wild man. Don't
Yeah.
tell me that. As I have leaky eyeballs all the time. But even just sharing my stories with them about my VA, the VA in 03 compared to the VA now, very different. When they come to my office and they say, oh, I just changed medication, and two of my brothers are over there. I think a lot of times they just need someone to talk to, someone who they can feel that they can put themselves in their shoes, in their boots, and that is the greatest connection. When I first came back, a Vietnam vet across the room saw me, identified me. He knew exactly what was wrong with me. So it's the connection. It's the connection with other vets. I think that is the most important thing that we can do to help our brothers and sisters connect with the resources and feel like there is hope.
Can I just ask one question? If there's somebody listening to this who is not a vet, and they're hearing you speak with such emotion about this, and they're wondering what they can do, is there anything that person can do to be helpful to someone who's looking for support from people who understand them?
Many times people have asked me if they can share my contact information with their friends or family because they don't know any other vets. So I give them my contact information. If they need someone to talk to, if they need anybody, I'm a vet. I retired after 20 years. So if they need someone to talk to, I'm there. I don't care what's their issue or whatever, but connecting them with another veteran that is peer level. Because, sometimes they'll connect them with someone who's like, I don't know, higher authority or, high medical staff somewhere. And it's not the same peer-to-peer vibes that you get, just to be able to talk like a vet does. Sometimes say the S word.
Let's get to another member of the audience. Go ahead.
Hi, Augie Cisco, Marine Corps, Vietnam vet. I used to be in that place you keep talking about over there that you can't say. Anyhow, the common theme that I hear here, which I think is most important in all this, is talking, speaking, telling your story. We worked for 10 years with Sister Sarge, Sister Linda McClanahan up at Racine Sienna Center doing retreats for PTSD on weekends. The key part of tell your sacred story. Vets around a circle, telling each other their stories, getting it out if they can. It's a start, but I think that has to be key part to all of this.
Talking and community, two big themes there. Before we go, as we mentioned at the top of the show, the number, in case anyone is in crisis, you can call 988. That's the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. But let me just ask you, Laura, finally, what would you say to someone, active duty, a veteran who's listening right now and is struggling? What is your message to that person?
I would start by telling them they're not alone, and I would ask them how they're doing, what can I do to help? Tell me your story. Whoever just said that was spot on. I can't tell you how therapeutic it was to write my book and how therapeutic it is to sit in front of you and talk about my experience. It truly does help. And making those connections. So I would just get that person talking as much as possible if they needed any help.
A great note to end on. I want to thank my guests here, Laura Colbert, an Iraq War vet and a member of the Wisconsin Board of Veterans Affairs, and Bob Curry, Vietnam War veteran and founder of Dryhootch. Thank you so much to both of you.
What a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to our live audience and our hosts here at the Pritzker Military Museum and Library, a financial supporter of the Middle, Scott English, Kim Hiltwine, Rachel Marcella, and April Smith-Miller, and to Jason Reevey at the controls here from WUWM in Milwaukee, and our friend Lori Jones from there as well. The Middle is brought to you by Long Nook Media, distributed by Illinois Public Media in Urbana, Illinois, and produced by Harrison Patino, Danny Alexander, Sam Burmistaz, Johnny Leonidas, Marina Price, and John Barth. I'm Jeremy Hobson. I will talk to you next week.